Hi there, welcome to Grey Muzzle Geekery for the week of June 3rd, 2019, episode 17. I'm Dusty Red, and with me as always,
Dusty White.
And we'll get into this week's news.
A sneaky thief steals rare Avengers Iron Man comic book worth $42,000 from a Denver comic shop. And not to show a Marvel bias, Batman art exhibit celebrates 80 years of Caped Crusaders comics.
A new challenger enters the Retro Console War. The Sega Genesis Mini launches on September 19th for only $80. It'll have 42 games with such hits like Sonic, Sonic 2, Echo the Dolphin, Altered Beast, Wise from Y'all Wave, Streets of Rage 2, Golden Axe, Road Rash 2, and many more.
Live-action Cowboy Bebop on Netflix is now a thing, where John Cho, of Harold and Kumar fame, headlines as Spike.
Xbox is pairing up with Axe Body Spray to launch its own products, Xbox Lynx. They plan sometime in July to release a deodorant, a shower gel, and a body spray. So, take a shower, you nerds. It's official. With the return of real-life Nazis, Indiana Jones will be returning to the theaters on July 9th, 2021. While there's no details to the plot and cast, Steven Spielberg will be at the helm, with John Williams composing the score. My hip.
Good Omens reserved a seat in remembrance for Terry Pratchett at their world premiere.
That's a tough one. I love me some Pratchett, and we got to see a little bit of Good Omens. Obviously, we're away for the weekend, so we got to see a couple episodes on Sunday. But it was your birthday this weekend.
Yay!
And we wanted to record at Journeyman Distillery in, Three Oaks?
Three Oaks.
Three Oaks, Michigan. And we went up to the bar. It was still right around, noonish?
Noon, I think, yeah, roughly.
Because they opened at 11:30.
Uh-huh.
But we left and then the hour ahead, so we did kind of forget about that whole time exchange thing. Look at me, I'm a Time Lord. And then went there, got our drinks. You had the figgy old fashioned.
Yep.
And I had what could best be described as a old fashioned sour.
Yeah, it kind of reminded me of a mimosa almost, like
mimosa. Jason Mimosa. See, it's full circle. But it wasn't so much. It didn't taste like a mimosa though, because it was an old fashioned with a half an ounce of lemon juice.
Yeah.
So it added like that sour. Like a regular, whiskey sour with the old-fashioned stuff to it. But yours was interesting, because mine tasted what I expected it to taste like. Yours was a figgy old-fashioned, and they used balsamic vinegar for the old-fashioned.
Right.
Or for the figgy flavor. And it was what I was able to describe as it was the uncanny valley of drinks, because I normally don't like balsamic vinegar. But this did have just enough to give it a fig flavor.
Right.
Without it being like, oh, this is salad dressing. So it was. So then we got our drinks, and then we go step outside into the back with our recording equipment, and we're already like, hey, let's do this. And right next to the property, they're laying asphalt.
Yep. Resurfacing.
And I already have enough problems editing the audio when we're on the road. I don't need to try to edit out the actual road.
Right.
So we did not have the opportunity to record, and saved it to a Tuesday night. So yay.
So I did want to try actually the other drink that I was wavering on. So hopefully if we go back soon, they'll still have it. But
this is something that before we give away, this became like a point of contention that some people were talking about too. Of like, you're either pro or against this particular
flavor profile.
Flavor profile, yes, I like that. So are you in Team Pickle or against Team Pickle? Dusty, go.
I am for Team Pickle.
And what was this drink?
It was a pickle gimlet.
Pickle gimlet.
So it was their Journeyman's gin, which is very crisp and clean tasting. I am a gin fan. Mixed with pickle juice and garnished with some of their own pickled cucumbers. Fresh cucumbers.
There's a difference. A pickled cucumber is a pickle, but no, I know what you mean.
Right. There's a difference between a fresh cucumber with like the hint of vinegar minus like a pickle.
Like Vlasic in a jar on a shelf for the last who knows how many years.
Right.
Apocalyptic pickle. Ooh, that's a fun one to say, actually. Apocalyptic? No. Okay. So, voice crack. I'm a teenager again. So, obviously we didn't get the chance to do that. However, speaking of pickles, I found myself in a pickle, getting some pickles, as then on our journey out to Chelsea, Michigan for Alliance South Michigan, we stopped off at St. Joseph. And there they have a little place called Silver Beach Pizzeria.
Yes.
And their pizza is...
Okay, let me describe this to you. Have you ever walked into an Aladdin's arcade, or maybe it might have been...
Enchanted
Castle
or
up here.
Any kind of arcade place.
It's arcade pizza, not quite like a Chuck E. Cheese, but just a little bit extra dingy in like the back alley of a mall somewhere.
Not even in a mall. Like this is one of those like cities that has the like 3 Galaga machines and a Mrs. Pac-Man machine set up in the front, and then the angry Italian guy like making pizzas in the back. Like, it's not bad pizza.
It's not. But it's definitely, if you had put a napkin to it or hovered a napkin above it, that napkin is now see-through.
Oh, the box you take it home in is now tissue paper. Like, it's that kind of greasy pizza. But the little secret with them is if you get seated and you look at over their menu, they have fried pickles.
They do.
And I know you're a fan of pickle chips.
I am.
But the pickle spears have a tendency of getting, what did you say, the onion ring effect?
Yeah, the onion. You take one bite at it, and then the next thing you know, you have a hot onion
slapped to your chin.
Yeah, and then you have breading.
I love fried breading.
So they do a really good job of actual spears not having that problem. So that was enjoyable.
And then on top of that, what are those glasses? It looked like it was a glass goblet that was frozen. And we had what they call snake bites. Now, we've definitely seen it in different places. They call it, what, black velvet?
Yeah.
Snake bite, some other names I can't think of. But ultimately, it's your bottom half is a cider.
Right.
And your top half
is a Guinness.
Or some sort of stout.
Right.
Most places will do Guinness, but some places will take whatever stout is a local brew or something is right on top. Either way, it's a sweeter stout with your finish of cider because it sits at the bottom. It separates.
Yep.
And yeah, so we had giant goblets of that before we decided to go out into the woods and hit people with plumbing supplies. Yay!
2.5 hours later.
Oh,
so
more than
we're
that.
not. We're
well, we started drinking
sober by that point.
Well, we started drinking at noonish. We finished by about 4ish. And we didn't even get into game until 10, 11 o'clock at night.
Right.
So, yeah, we were obviously there was no alcohol in our system anymore at that point. But needless to say, starting our birthday off right, a belated
cheers
to you, my dear. So, we stopped off there. I left my credit card like an idiot.
Whoops.
Because they wanted me to fill out a comment card. And so I filled out the comment card. And then I forgot to take my credit card out of the top of that little plastic sleeve thing. So I was like, cool, I did my thing. I filled out a comment card. I'm going to walk away now, and left my credit card there. Needless to say, they held it for me, so yay, I was able to pick it back up on Sunday. But then, yeah, we made our way out to the campsite. We helped set up for the game and did our thing, did our weekend thing. But
I'm lucky to get to celebrate a lot of my birthdays, have LARP memories for me because of, being early June. It's almost the last couple of weekends that are good for weather-wise until it gets too hot.
And I fall in the same category where I got the September birthdays, so I do have prime fall, all the campers and whatnot are done. leaves are turning or have turned, and ta-da, like perfect birthday time too. So we both fall into that LARP season, birthday season.
Yep. So, to kind of gear away from some of our heavy LARP, we will do a recap a little later on today, but we did want to kind of get back to some of our questions as far as just general geekdom. And one of our listener questions from Travis, he asks us, who makes for the best stories generally? The hero, the villain, or the anti-hero? What would be your thoughts?
Oof. I mean, typically it was the hero, because anti-hero and villain, like, we've become more and more, I don't want to say sensitive, compassionate to the villain, I think, as a society, maybe. Sympathetic to a point where in the past it was very clear, black and white. I am the hero, you are the bad guy. I am the Batman, you are the villain. Like, even Batman didn't have his shaded, he was orphaned and became a crime fighter, and even that story didn't come till a little bit later. So, like, Superman's a good example, and like a lot of these heroes were very black and white, good guy, bad guy. I'm a good guy because I punch Nazis in the face, and you're a bad guy because you are a Nazi. Well, now you get into the moral ambiguities and the moral gray areas of, the anti-hero, which is not quite a villain, but is out for a specific thing. The bounty hunter that does some morally questionable things, but is still following a precedence or a set of, if not laws, a set of moral ethics and codes.
Personal moral ethics.
Personal code, so to speak. So it is interesting now to see that the villain has become more of an interesting story. As we're seeing, again, I'm a little biased on Batman and Joker and stuff, where you're starting to see, even with the new Joaquin Phoenix Joker movie.
Right.
They've turned a typically insane bad guy, or even before that, when he was just the Joker was a literal clown prince of crime, and that's it. Even before that, when he was just like the one-off, like, I'm the Joker, look at me, you got me. Look at Adam West and stuff, where he just kind of had a goofy plan and disappeared. Where now all of a sudden you're going to a tortured figure, you're going to somebody who is almost sympathetic. I mean, you saw from just the trailer alone, he's with his mom. And so it's leading up to something tragic has happened to that version of Joker, which is sympathetic. We all had a mom, I assume.
Right.
So it's easy to look and go, oh, maybe, like, as soon as you put that thought of maybe the Joker isn't that bad, or I could see why he did that, or any kind of sympathy toward that, it's that is where storytelling has gone, as far as I've seen, in terms of the hero is almost boring.
I wonder, I would almost say that I wonder if that's gradually just gotten more and more popular and become more mainstream because children like us have grown up and looking for that sympathetic story. What comes to mind for me would be the Disney movie Maleficent.
Okay.
Maleficent, straight up in Disney,
a bad guy. There's no question that's bad guy.
She's just mad she didn't get invited. That's all she is.
But,
but when they went and did the live action with Angelina Jolie, they showed a different side of her. Like, she still ends up being pissy and mad and mean, but she has a reason. She's been a tortured person with a sympathetic back history. So I just wonder if that's something that the anti-hero popularity
another
comes from that.
Complete twist is Wicked.
Oh, yeah,
like
that's actually
they
a really
play
good
that
point.
out completely to the point of rewritten the entire story of her and getting splashed and melting when she really doesn't, and like they completely do a 360 on like she's this bad person and she's really not. And
it's definitely a prequel, and it shows the back history of the person
of someone who was always just a straight up bad guy, just
right.
a straight up I'll get you and that's it, flying monkeys and what we know that
and
for.
And even showing Glinda becoming somebody that is supposed to be all good and always knowing what to do and always doing right, becoming ambiguous at the end and going, well, kind of not.
So maybe a third one might be the best question for what's the best hero or what's the best story. Maybe the flawed hero is like could be the new trend. You see it with all the Disney the MCU movies with everybody having a flaw that they're playing on and something that they want to touch more on they're heroes, but rather than a villain, like not so much redeeming himself, but having a sympathetic arc, like a sympathetic story arc, maybe start having heroes, or you already are starting to see heroes, with a flawed hero arc of, he is super powerful and does things, but might have a dad bod. Spoilers! But stuff like that could be one of those, how do you tell a story to retell a story? Because heroes are still heroes. Like, ultimately we still look to, and I'm looking at your shirt, Spider-Man and Captain America and Thor and Iron Man and stuff. So you still see, and Iron Man's a good example of the flawed hero of,
right,
having Robert Downey Jr. just like, yep, in it for the money. What you can do about it? Me. And his story arc changes and develops and becomes a little bit more compassionate and understanding, and ultimately has everything in the world, but at the end of the day wants a family.
Still got daddy issues.
But ultimately all he wants is a family.
Right.
So flawed heroes may be the big storytelling arc for the future.
Well, even with The Watchmen coming out, that is all flawed comic book heroes coming out to HBO.
So maybe that might be the sleeper then. Maybe that's the sleeper hit where everybody's kind of like, oh, Watchmen, because I like the movie personally. I enjoyed the Watchmen movie. I did not. We can get into why you didn't like the movie.
I think my not liking the movie was based on a lot of things outside of technically the movie's control. I went at a midnight showing. It was busy. We ended up right next to people that needed some Axe body wash 360.
Some Xbox 360 body wash. There we go. It'll be out in July. Woo!
It just was not
shower nerds.
It was not a good experience.
Okay.
But I think the movie also kind of fell flat for its time.
And I think you're just about touched on what I was going to say is I wonder if it was for its time type thing. Because it came out pretty early in the comic craze. But would it have benefited from the comic craze? Or would it have flopped because of it?
I think HBO is trying to hope that it's going to come back with the comic book age and the era. And the fact
HBO gets away with whatever
a lot more
damn well
adult
pleases,
themes
right?
Than a movie does.
Because once you put rated X or rated R, like a hard R,
right?
Like an angry pirate, hard R. That was so bad. I'm fired. You need a new co-host. I'll just run the site. You just edit it. So something that's a little bit more. Again, I hate beating a dead horse here, but one of your people's introductions to Game of Thrones was Daenerys being
mounted,
violently deflowered on TV. So
right.
Something like that might take that edginess that's needed for the Watchmen, because it's supposed to be, in the comic they even make
it was a graphic
to
novel. It was definitely not
capital G in terms of graphic, right?
It was not a series like
comic
series, yeah.
And I guess maybe what HBO might be in their hands, because obviously the big joke right now is, what happened on Monday for Game of Thrones is over, is everybody unsubscribed from HBO, and I have enough faith in HBO to work with something, and it's interesting that they take Watchmen as our topic, because
they're actually doing a duo work of Watchmen and also the series of The Golden Compass. They're going further into that series that I'm interested to see how they go and what they do with it.
So they're very clearly touching on that base that they're hoping that they already tapped into with Game of Thrones,
right?
And hopefully grabbing onto the other future. And obviously, we didn't announce it in our news, and we'll do an official news announcement. But Netflix is making a stab at Magic the Gathering, which for a collectible card game has enough of a backstory, has enough of a history to...
See, and that's actually new
out.
for me. I used to play Magic, but I just used to play with my ex-boyfriend's deck at the time and just sit around and joke.
What color deck?
I think red? Maybe green.
Play red, green? Did you mix them up, or...?
Maybe it was being cliche and did all green.
Understand that question is like important as like what house do you belong to in terms of...
I think I was out of that. I was... That was the beginning of my nerddom, so I didn't get it really.
Get into Magic?
No.
Okay.
So, but I know I have a lot of friends that are into it, but I didn't realize it until we were on the Discord channel and some of the players were talking about having it be this massive backstory. I had no idea.
Oh, there's a ton of backstory, and that's one of the things that makes the game itself interesting is because they have flavor text, and a lot of it's just like character quotes or quotes about a thing. And I'm willing to bet that it was probably just a designer that was being kind of a smartass and throwing some sort of like funny quote in there or something that this character would say. But once you turn it into a character, you can't help but develop backstory and history with it. And all of a sudden these characters intermingle, and then you're dealing with all these character interactions and this whole world that's expanded from it. Because I definitely started playing... high school, so I started in 97, maybe 96, 97, and my big stuff was the Ice Age deck.
Okay.
And the problem that I had was, again, I was in high school, so I didn't make a lot of money because students don't make much money.
Right.
And whatever money I made from mowing lawns and stuff, I turned around and bought some decks, and I actually won a lot of decks from my local comic book place. Beating him in... The owner would play me in X-Men versus Street Fighter. Not Capcom versus Street Fighter. X-Men versus Street Fighter. And I whooped his ass. And because of it, I would get like free decks. And it was a cool deal that he made. He'd be like, hey, let's play. If you win, I'll give you a free booster. If you lose, you have to buy 2 boosters.
Ah.
So I would still like buy his stuff.
Right.
Which is for something I wanted anyway. But every now and then I'd win something. Well, yeah, just kind of like cut the deal down because I was like winning boosters regularly. But I did strike a deal where I'd sell him back extra cards and stuff like, yeah, you know what, I'll give you this card, you can sell it back. So him and I were cool. Tony and I were friends. I doubt he's listening, but anyway, so that was my introduction. However, during that time in 99 maybe, they took all the Ice Age and they came out with another set, Mirage I think it was, and they took all the Ice Age and banned it from tournament play.
Okay.
Well, I had like $1,000 worth of
so
tournament
just like
ready
that,
deck, and
now
they're like,
just,
"Oh, you can't play this deck no more."
You're completely banned, or you have no choice. Like,
so I was able to hammer together and cobble together some decks for funsies, but I just stopped playing.
Right.
I was like, I'm out, and all my friends were like, "Oh, we got the new stuff, and I got this and this," and I just stopped playing because of that. Now, obviously, like sometime later, they allowed a bunch of stuff, and the rules have drastically changed since then.
Right.
But at that point, I was like, and I wish I knew where the cards were. I think I ended up selling them off, but I had German cards. Wir den dann Skelette or something. It was like 1/1 black skeletons, all German, that if they die, they're a regen. So you could just regenerate them. But
Caleb's always talked that he unfortunately lost a crap ton of very expensive cards in a binder in his grandparents' basement when it flooded.
Oh, no.
Cry, yeah. But I think I was playing POGS when other people were
had POGS too, though.
playing Magic, so I guess I was on the weirder side of that nerdom.
Did you collect or did you slam? Did you actually have a slammer?
I did.
Did you have like a custom
I had a
engraved?
full cylinder full of stuff, and we used to play.
Did you ever get into the sleeves? Like that had like binder sleeves that were specifically made for
I don't think I ever got
POGs.
that far, but my grade school, actually, my middle school would have POG tournaments. and give them
Like
out
jumping
as,
off an 8-foot ladder.
and it would be like a bracket type system of like, could you be good or could you be better? Could you beat people? And they like bred some competitiveness into POGS. And so like my friends and I got into it. We had big canisters of it. We'd go to comic book shops to buy them.
So for our listeners under the age of 30,
You know, I'm shocked that POGS haven't really done.
they started coming back.
They did? Okay, I must have missed
They
it.
started. My sister sent me a picture. Target.
Okay.
And that's actually funny. That I brought that up, but I didn't mean to. Target started bringing back a lot of games.
Oh, that's
One
right.
of which you took a picture of me holding. What game was that?
Oh, Crossfire.
Don't get caught in the
Crossfire!
But there's actually a legitimate, I'm assuming reprint.
Yeah.
But the box looks with the original, the two kids and like
The bad
fake,
80s, early 90s graphics.
and the bad amount of fun that they're pretending to have, like, is a legitimate game that you could get. What was it, $30? Like, I almost bought it. Like, I was like, oh my god, Crossfire, $30. Like,
You can imagine the adults now finding some way to make a Crossfire drinking game.
oh no. I already thought of, like, you get certain balls and color them, and so like you knock the certain balls in, or you knock the certain spinner in. You have to do a shot every time you knock a goal
Oh,
in.
my
Like,
liver.
oh, we should bring it to our next camping outing.
So,
Hungry Hippos,
to go on
Fireball
to that,
Alley.
oh no.
You remember Fireball Alley, right?
Yes. Aggravation.
Now, when you played this game, did you set it up beforehand, or did you set it up properly as you went along? The game I'm talking about is Mousetrap.
I think I can only remember a handful of times we actually played Mousetrap correctly.
But did you like just set it up beforehand
And then just you just watch the Mousetrap go. That's all you did.
the Rube Goldberg machine, of course.
Yeah. I had the little fishing game I'd set up and play with my dad with the little magnets that would go around and go up and down and chomp.
Ants in the Pants.
Yeah,
Although we did see Yeti in My Spaghetti.
that's a new one.
And then one that we saw at, Michael's? Or Joanne's?
Joanne's.
The poop game or whatever. It was like a literal, like, Mr. Hanky from, like, it was a turd, and you try to cram it down this toilet. Bleh.
So, to...
Speaking of poop, there's your segue chance. Go!
No, I can't.
Speaking of poop,
So, going off of that, what kind of...
poop!
So much. I hate you so much.
I mean, yes. Next listener question.
What best romantic comedy that would become legendary if the characters in it were portrayed by superheroes?
How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. Starring Hawkeye and Black Widow.
Oh. Boom! That's awful. That is so awful.
Next. How about you?
I would say Princess Bride. Because,
Okay, that's a rom-com, sure.
I mean, you got Andre the Giant. He's a superhero. You got Negro Montoya. He's a super...
A Negro Montoya. A Negro Montoya. Not getting edited.
A Negro Montoya.
Uh-huh.
And then you have Dread Pirate Roberts.
There we go.
And he's a superhero. But I want to take her from Wonder Woman because she's Antitope, and I don't know what her name is, but she plays the general of the queen of the Amazonian
women, the Amazons, right?
So I would be like, I could mesh that in together. It'd be awful, but it would be good.
I'm still half hung up on Princess Bride being a rom-com.
Why wouldn't it be a rom-com?
This is the same kind of argument of like Die Hard isn't a Christmas movie. Like, it's one of those, like, I guess it fits romantic comedy. I see it far more a comedy. Like Robin Hood Men in Tights is also a rom-com then. Like,
I mean, it's essentially the same movie, just by Mel Brooks.
No, Mel Brooks. So, I mean, okay, that could be one of our debate topics of, would you consider it a rom-com or straight-up comedy? Like, I always just assumed Princess Bride was a comedy. It makes sense to call it a rom-com. A fourth wall-breaking rom-com at that, to a degree. The characters don't break the fourth wall, but the movie itself pans out to be like, oh, hey, Chicago kid, you're being told a story. Like,
right.
So
Fred Savage,
yeah.
sick in his bed.
So, that's weird. No, never thought of it that way.
Okay.
Interesting.
All right, so we teased a little bit early on, but let's go ahead and jump into our final segment, is the recap of our last event, South Michigan, June event, end of May, early
May,
June.
Birthday event! Woo!
What do you think?
I had a good time. Again, Michigan rears its ugly head and rains/hails on us while we're there. It seems just weather is not in my favor when I'm playing that game. Cause
right.
Like, the dry weekend we had was 30 degrees at night with no heat in the cabins. So now we go to South Michigan where we do have all the stuff, but it's hailing and raining and just wet ground. The event itself was interesting for me in a sense of they had it almost very, I don't say clear, but there seemed to have been a setup between what's personal plot and what's like world story plot.
Almost traveler's plot, or just...
I want to say traveler's plot. Here's plot that's available for everybody. Mm-hmm. And then this is plot that is, or stories or whatever, being told for specific players or whatnot. Which is fine, because obviously you got to do some sort of fan service and or service to your local and your loyal player base. So we got hooked onto a lot of the personal plot. So really greater world story stuff, I didn't learn much.
Right.
Other than helping one particular character. Those who know, who don't, it's irregardless because it's irrelevant, because those who are dungeon masters or gamers themselves understand, which is interesting for dungeon masters actually, because everything technically is personal plot. But what we did was something that was very specific to a specific character,
right,
who was doing a thing. So very head in the sand type thing for us, where, hey, what is this character doing? Cool, we need to go help this character go do some stuff. And that's what our focus was.
Right.
Was to go help this person do this set of adventures or modules or things to assist her friend, her ally, her whatever.
To complete it.
Whereas the other stories and other things that were going on that were far more fair game, job boards and contracts and, hey,
positions.
I'm bored, I want to go do this. Or, hey, I want to help a guild or help this or help that. But we didn't do almost any of that. So for me, it was interesting because I made a, not so much promise, but like, hey, because of what we're doing and our influence in this game, we need to be more world focused. And then that first event we go back and we're like super coned in, tunnel vision on this one thing. So it was good. The game was good. I was not in the right mindset for it. Right. So it took me a little bit to recover and to refocus on, wait. This is for a bigger story. What we were doing is for the bigger story. But it just didn't seem like it when you're literally tunnel vision in a tunnel. So,
and I think that comes up with us being who we are and the characters that we play specifically, because people do come in and we are acknowledged as skilled players and go, hey, I need help doing this. We don't ask a lot of questions depending on who they are. If they're saying, hey, sure, I need this done, and depending on who they are, we're not going to be like, well, why are we doing it? We're not going to be antagonistic or contrarian to it. Sure, you need it done? Absolutely.
Right.
So I would almost say, to kind of play off of what you were saying, is it seemed like it was world building for the players that were coming in that didn't know a lot of stuff.
Right.
Had that happened maybe 3 or 4 months ago or a year ago for us, I think our event would have been completely different. But
we would have been on the public stuff,
absolutely,
and chasing down other things. Oh, for sure.
So for us specifically, it was a unique weekend. I think I said halfway through the weekend, I was just like, it's interesting. Here we are joining a group, And it's the first event that we're all kind of running together, or some of us are running together as this group. And then we get told, oh, but some of this stuff that's happening in town, we can't tell these people. So is this almost like weird dichotomy between, okay, I just joined this group where we're supposed to be, you know, all one mission, all one thing, and that's what ended up happening. But at the same time, we still had things that we needed to help the town do that were more overarching, more important for everyone than just a specific person.
Fair. And yeah, I mean, ultimately, stat-wise, game is good. The new system that they have in place is still interesting. It's still taking
I'm still having a lot of fun with it.
Oh, I'm having fun with it. I'm disliking because we had a realization in our conversation of just how much there can be sometimes, how additional stuff kind of trickles on itself, because it is tree based. It is hey, you learn this skill, you could get this skill, and with this skill you could use it in a combo platter it's like building a taco,
right?
Like, hey, you have your tortilla, okay, cool, and you have now we're gonna add some meat on there, now we're gonna add some cheese, and we're gonna add, or for me, it's gonna be lime and cilantro, you crazy animals, but but you do that, and then all of a sudden you put it all together, and now you have a taco that works well because you have all of these ingredients to make it. Why's
it gotta be a taco? Why can't it be a lasagna?
Because cheese. Duh, I don't eat cheese. So, but it's that concept of like there's a lot of I guess layers and building of things. We'll go with your lasagna reference, Garfield. But so there is a little. I don't want to say it's daunting because obviously if you sit and read the rule book, you're good. But there is a point that I'm beginning to see where when you come into the game, you get your basic skills and your first hand grasp of the game. You're like, okay, cool. But then there's almost a point where we are in our like mid-level area or low to mid-level. This next tier that I see opening up where there's a lot of options now and there's a lot of things that go in conjunction with just your skills. So now it isn't just, hey, here's the rule book of your character skills, but now here's either some magic items or some other abilities that help augment or bolster high magic for you and all these other things that increase your normal skills or lower skills or whatnot to make them better. And so it's one of those things, if you read through the rule book, you're fine. You obviously want to memorize the rules and memorize as much of the rules as possible. But it's one of those things where you have to kind of reread it and go, oh, I did not realize this ability is so good. One of them was being surprising attack from a couple weeks ago, really. But like surprising attack so we don't lose our gamer, for our non-LARPer here, is a lot of stuff happens on a 3 count. So
right.
One I rift in, or one I climb a boat, or two. A lot of it 3 counted.
Uh-huh.
Well, surprising attack allows you to, while they're doing that 3 count, to attack basically your full damage without worrying about being behind them. So I could stand in front of the guy, and if he's like, one, I climb a boat, I could do all of my backstab and double damage and all my rogue stuff in his face.
Oh, okay.
It doesn't seem that good, because you're like, oh yeah, how often? But then you have those moments where you're like, holy crap, things are rifting in or appearing or
a mouth
climbing
is
out
crawling
of the
out of a cave
clawing
face.
out of the yeah, like right next to you. It's like one eye appear from the shadows. I could just murder him. So you don't realize skills like that are really good until you're in that moment. So, but then it's one of those cases that as soon as you buy that skill, you don't use it because it doesn't come up for weeks on end. So it's very, very interesting that you have to pick and choose these skills, and you don't understand something until you get to see it firsthand. Until you get to stand there and see, in one of our friends' case, the lizard, the naga, climbing onto the boat.
Right.
Where he's like, oh crap, I have this ability. And now all of a sudden he's doing massive amounts of damage to this guy. And not realizing that, like, holy crap, this is the best skill ever.
Right.
Like, it's super situational, but I have the best skill in the game.
So to kind of bring it back towards towards the roleplay aspect of it, a huge shout out for one of our listeners, Brooks, for being a highlight for me, getting the orc birthday song.
Oh, that was. Do you remember it? It was like na 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 na. It's your birthday. I was dying.
I was not expecting it. I wasn't expecting it to be like an actual full birthday song. Thank you. Another shout out to, obviously a little personal selfish for myself, but Bridget Belfry cooking me a birthday cake, or baking me a birthday cake, I guess I should say.
And what kind of cake was it?
It was my favorite kind of cake.
Which is?
Spice cake with cream cheese icing. It was so good.
It was good.
So I really enjoy moments like that, and really just, I personally, for myself, I actually had TC ask me, you know, what are you looking for plot? What are you looking for doing as your character in game? And I said, honestly, this weekend was the best example. Is my character is so supportive of a lot of other people's stuff and getting their stuff needed to get done, and being an advisor or being someone that they can talk to. I had a lot of that this weekend. Sitting there and asking questions and learning people's histories, and learning that, you know, somebody did these 3 different things and now they don't know why their parts of their person are missing, and timelines are being affected and stuff like that. That's stuff I like to do. Give me Saturday night, hey, I gotta go cast some spells and do some stuff at the end of the night to help save a town. Great. But I want to be interactive with the people I'm traveling with, and the people that, you know, might come up to me and go, hey, on this mod, or hey, on this adventure, hey, I need to, do you trust me? Yes. And it just escalates from there. So I had a lot of those good interactions this weekend.
I do see a lot of, when you get into an older gamer and an older player, that plot does, like, there's so much that we're interested in. There's so much of your character that you look at and go, this is what I'm into and this is what I'm not.
Right.
And we are unique because we're playing similar characters from another game. And so, and it doesn't help that, in a way, because of those characters that know us from that other game, also kind of help dictate how we play too. Like, if we both walked into another game as our characters, so we go to a third game as our characters and nobody knows us, there's a little bit more freedom that we have.
Okay.
Because there's no reputation at all.
Right.
Where I rolled in and you rolled in, and those who recognize us was like, oh, hey, it's you. You know, it's Red, or it's the Maelstrom, or all these other things.
Right.
So it's not a bad thing, because it does reinforce that character. Like, this is what I want to play. These are people that help reinforce, because there is a feedback loop that happens when you play your character. If you walk up with your elf ears and some markings, and I recognize you as an elf, it reinforces to you in your own head that I'm an elf. I'm playing this elf character.
Right.
And it works for tabletop too, where one of the DM tricks I read and knew is, like, when you're referring to a character, have NPCs react to that character based on their race or based how they look, or ask them, you know, hey, you know, how tall is your character again? Oh, he's only 3 feet tall. So then when you do a description, yeah, you guys all walk up to the bar, and the bartender, like, gives you a little booster seat or something for you. Something as silly as that helps reinforce the fact that, oh shit, I am playing a character that's only 3 feet tall, and like, right. Or I'm playing a character that's an orc. So, so you got an orc, and halfling, and an elf walk into a bar. Big joke here, but a good DM will be like, yeah, the elf walks in, and people look at him, and to the orc, you have to duck through the doorway. Just right. Something of saying you have to duck as you walk in the doorway is a feedback to the player playing that orc of, hey, dude, you're like 9 feet tall.
Right.
So having characters recognize you for being an elf and me being a fox is a huge benefit to this game and to any game you play that way. So what's interesting when we come in as these characters is that, yeah, we do have those stories, and especially as we get older, that I've noticed. See, I told you I'm coming around to my point.
Uh-huh.
As older players, we become more fascinated in other people's stories. Not just what our dungeon masters or our storytellers or what the game is putting out there,
uh-huh.
but to other players. Hey, tell me about yourself. Tell me a little bit about your history. Tell me about this. Because you see a lot of newer players that are still trying to get into the world and trying to figure it out for themselves. And, like, almost like convince themselves of, okay, so I come from this family and I do this and I do this. So when a player comes up to you and just like, so what brings you out into, and that was my big thing, is like I'll go up to a lot of newer players or even players I don't know all that well. I'm like, so why are you adventuring?
Right.
Like, why are you out here putting your neck on the line?
Tell me your story.
Yeah, what, like, are you an orphan? Because we're probably all orphans here. Or like, do you know your parents? Do you have any siblings? But all those tropes and all those, like, those stories. So to me, that's what I did a little bit more this weekend, was started going to some players and just be like, hey, tell me your story. Tell me what brings you around. Why are you out here getting stabbed repeatedly? Yeah, sure, you get healed, but during the moment of being stabbed can't feel good. But yet you still do it, and you're still going for money, and it's not so much an out-of-gamey thing, because obviously we're all playing a game, so we don't think of it of like, oh, I just bled all over myself and got healed. But what's character motivations? What's pushing this character forward? What drives you to go and take, basically, if not something as specific as getting stabbed for money, but why are you willing to go risk your neck to go do this? Is it for money? Is it for a healing guild? Is it for just to understand magic and get knowledge? That was my big thing for the weekend. Talked to a couple players and talked to a couple people and got some more personal stories, especially when you have weather that's raining and storming and hailing even. You have that moment to sit down while you're just like hiding in a cabin or hiding in a tavern and be like, so what's your deal?
Right.
Who are you? No, I didn't ask your name. Who are you?
So tell me a little bit about one of your highlights, adventures or mods this weekend.
For this weekend, I mean, it probably ties into one of yours as well, where we did the Maw of Madness at the end.
Yeah.
It's a good example of a dungeon master, storyteller, whatever, knowing their player base, because when he ran this particular module, it was 6 of us? 5 of us? I think 5.
6.
6 of us.
6.
And so, with the 6 of us, that storyteller, Travis, obviously, but that storyteller knew who we all were and had an idea of some of our fears and some of the things that would make us crazy and all this other stuff. Because they basically set it up like a haunted house.
Yeah.
And even...
Which I've never been through as a LARP scenario. I've never gone into a mod building or a cabin set up
to be a haunted... Well, and from what I heard, that was both Travis and Chris's ideas to play it off more of a haunted house. Because it was pretty dark in there. And part of it was we hit the lights accidentally because I had extension cords or whatever else wrong. We hit the lights, no big deal. But adapt to the scene when everything went pitch black and really couldn't see much, and we're kind of reacting to the sounds that they had a speaker playing horror, screamy, torture sounds. And then some of the monsters, rather than just coming out and hitting us running away, Chris would like crawl out of the bed like a zombie and like flop and kind of swing at you and just spook the shit out of you. Right. And so you look and there he was. You're like, oh crap, and you fight him and you just slowly die. Like him in a combat situation wasn't the threat. The threat was there was nothing there a second ago. Right. And then now there's a dude in front of you. Like one of those scream moments.
Jump scares.
One of our Tiger Star, ARRGH, was still, I heard from Chris, was like, ARRGH was standing there, and Chris was reaching out and like just kind of touching his face and his shoulder and then pull back, and ARRGH would like look over to, I think, Mathis or somebody else. I was like, why are you touching me? And like nobody was touching him, but then eventually like, so ARRGH like started reaching in the darkness with his sword and started poking and felt like, as Chris would say, the fleshy give of a person, and then freaked, was like, oh god, there's something there, like, and he was like, no, it's out of game, like, you know, but it's just something, just messing with people's senses by touching them or brushing against them. And again, us all being friends in this particular scenario, there's a little bit of a leeway. Obviously, you're not supposed to touch players while you're playing, but because we're all more or less consensus, like, yeah, we're cool, this is a haunted house, someone reaching out in the dark and, like, just caressing the side of your face, you pee yourself a little bit. Like bladder control in your old age is not one of our things. So it's, for me, that was one of our highlights of going into basically a haunted house, having to complete a specific goal, and while you're doing this, having their storyteller / dungeon master or whatever. I'm gonna just flat out. I like storyteller. I've always liked the term storyteller because it does more than just like I'm a dungeon master. How much do they pay you an hour? Well, I'm a general. I'm a GM. I'm a game master. No, you're a storyteller. Ideally, you're a storyteller. So our storyteller knew us, and while we're trying to achieve this goal, was basically whispering insanity into our ears. And again, because he knew us and knew our characters, was able to touch on some of these things that would most affect the character. Would affect the, hey, your pack is dead, or hey, you're failing at everything you do, or things that are very character specific.
Right.
So that coupled with the intimate touch of, and not that kind of soft crest intimate touch on your cheek, but the intimate touch of a storyteller knowing characters and knowing weaknesses and flaws and personality traits is always huge for me because it does make things so personal.
Right.
It's easy to be with a huge group and just be like, oh, you're afraid of being alone, because everybody's more or less afraid of being alone. But to touch on very real things that immerse you into the game and pull you in and have that whole thing.
And it's one of those things when it's done really well, it's done really well.
I mean, it was
and
dark,
when
you're
it's
reaching
done
your hand,
bad,
you got whispering.
It is very, very bad.
It can be. I don't have much experience with being bad, but... So what's one of your highlights?
I would say that, and like I kind of mentioned it earlier in the episode, having a character who I have grown to get close with just by talking to and asking questions and getting to know her back history and what she's doing. Have her come up to me on a mod and go, Dusty, I need you. Do you trust me?
Sure.
And I absolutely, immediate out of my mouth is yes. And she goes, I need you to die. And I immediately took a knee, took a pole arm to the fucking chest, and then began counting my death count.
Right.
And obviously ended up working out, but it's one of those moments are important to me. Moments like that where somebody I can inflict is not the right word. I can convey you mean something to me, where she knows that I'm not somebody that comes off saying things like that easily. So I would hope that moment brings us closer together as two characters that do seem to see eye to eye on a lot of things. So on that note.
Well, and I know we could do quick announcements. Nero Grand Rapids.
Correct.
Is having an event this coming weekend, which is the
5th and the 6th? No.
5th, 6th.
Today's the 4th, so 8th.
Well,
June 8th.
So on June 8th, today's the 4th, well, not when they hear this, but on June 8th, there will be a Nero Grand Rapids event. So if you guys are interested in Nero, there's an opportunity to go play there. And that's all I can think of in terms of that.
June 29th is a one-day for Alliance South Michigan.
We will have more. We will have more details on that. But yes, Alliance South Michigan will be running, and if you're brand new to LARPing and are in the Ann Arbor-ish area, they're having a one day, which is you start Saturday at 10 o'clock and you finish Saturday at 7, 6, close to sundown, ideally, depending when sundown is. And it's a good way to experience the game without the commitment, so to speak.
Right.
You're at worst, you lose a couple hours on your Saturday. Because I'm obviously a big fan of get fully immersed play on Friday through Sunday, but some people can't do that.
Right.
So it's a case of, hey, you want to come out and you're curious and see what we're doing and what we're up to? You want to come in NPC and be a monster and get hit and interact? Come out on that Saturday and just spend the day and done.
Nero Keizu does have also a weekend event on June 21st through the 23rd, and that is in the Kalamazoo area.
Kalamazoo, Michigan. And obviously we will do a shout-out / bulletin in probably next week's episode, giving some credit to our Patreon listeners. Thank you very much, our Patreon friends. And to whatever events that will be going on, we need to kind of encourage this in terms of conventions that may be going on, because I know there's some other events that are going on that time as well, comic book stuff. And we'll also talk about the upcoming Electronic Entertainment Expo, or E3, which will be on June 7th, if I'm not mistaken. So, or June 11th. One of those. It's coming up soon.
Okay, I was going to say June 11th, probably.
Yeah, I think June 11th. It's coming up soon, and we'll have some talks about that because we'll be able to dip into video gaming and the new games that will be coming out and such soon. So, on that note, I am done, Dusty White. You have anything else to add?
Nope.
All right. So, like we like to say here at the Grey Muzzle Geekery, that we are all geeks. To be otherwise may very well mean to live without passion. Have a good night.
Night.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Grey Muzzle Geekery with Dusty Red and Dusty White.
You can support our continued geekery at our Patreon website, patreon.com/Grey Muzzle Geekery. Be sure to check back often as we start to add geek cred levels.
You can send your questions and comments to us at greymuzzlegeekery@gmail.com or find us on Twitter at Grey Muzzle Geek.
We can be found on iTunes, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and Buzzsprout.
And a special thank you to Pepper Coyote for our intro theme. And if you like what you heard, you can find more of his stuff on Spotify, Patreon, or directly from his Bandcamp page.